The crystal towers of Nexus Prime reached high into the purple sky. Inside the tallest tower, beings from different worlds sat around a massive table. They called themselves the Galactic HFY. For 3,000 years they had ruled over hundreds of star systems and millions of planets. Admiral Taman stood at the head of the table. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes glowed in the dim light. The Vorthak were known as the best fighters in the galaxy. They had sharp claws and could move faster than most other beings. Taman had served the hegemony for 50 years, leading their armies to victory after victory. "Something is wrong in the Outer Rim," Taman said. His voice was deep and rough. 20 colonies have gone silent in the past month. No distress calls, no signals, nothing. Counselor Nari shifted in her crystal chair. She was a Kalari, made of living crystal that changed colors with her thoughts. Right now, she glowed a worried blue. The Kalari were the smartest beings in the galaxy. They could think faster than any computer and solve problems that would take others years to understand. "Show us the data," Nari said. Her voice sounded like music, even when she was concerned. Taman pressed a button on the table. A hologram appeared above them, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the missing colonies. They formed a strange pattern, like something was moving through space in a planned way. Elder Jihun leaned forward. He was old, even for his long-lived species. The Altarians lived for thousands of years, and Jihun had seen the rise of the hegemony from the beginning. His white hair fell to his shoulders, and his purple skin was marked with the wrinkles of age. "What about the ships we sent to investigate?" Jihun asked. "Gone," Taman replied. 3 battle groups, 200 ships total. They reached the outer systems and then nothing. No wreckage, no energy signatures. They just vanished. The room fell silent. Around the table sat representatives from 12 different species. Each one ruled their own corner of the galaxy under hegemony law. The gas-like Nephrim floated in their special containers, changing colors as they communicated through chemical signals. The plant-based Verdani rustled their leaves nervously. The mechanical Axiom clicked and whirred as they processed the information. "Counselor." Nari's crystal body turned yellow with thought. "Have you checked the archives? Perhaps there is a record of similar events?" "I did," Taman said. "There are some old stories, legends really, about a species that used to cause trouble in this part of the galaxy." "What kind of legends, Elder?" Jihun asked. Taman looked uncomfortable. Even for a warrior, he seemed nervous about what he was going to say. "The archives mention something called Terrans or humans. The records say they were a young species that refused to follow galactic law. They fought against the early hegemony about 500 years ago." "I remember those stories," Jihun said slowly. "But they were just myths. Tales to scare young species into following the rules. The humans were supposed to be impossible warriors who could adapt to any situation. They could survive in places that would kill other beings. They could learn new technologies in days instead of years." Nari's body flashed red with disbelief. "Impossible. No species can evolve that quickly. The laws of biology do not allow it." The stories say they disappeared one day, Taman continued. Their entire civilization just vanished. Some records claim the early hegemony destroyed them. Others say they fled to unknown space, but most scholars agree they never existed at all. A new voice spoke from across the room. Commander Keong was the youngest member of the council. She represented the hegemony's intelligence network. Her species, the Shadar, could change their appearance to look like almost any other being. Right now, she looked like a pale humanoid with silver hair and black eyes. "What if the stories are true?" Keong asked. "What if the humans did exist, and they have returned?" The room erupted in noise. Several counselors spoke at once, their voices mixing into chaos. The axiom beeped loudly in binary code. The Nephilim released clouds of angry red gas. The Verdani's leaves rustled like a storm wind. Silence. Elder Ji-hoon's voice cut through the noise. Despite his age, he could still command respect. "Commander, Kyung, explain your thinking." Kyung stood up. "The pattern of disappearances is not random. Something is moving through our space with purpose. It targets military outposts and communication centers first. This is the work of intelligence, not pirates or machines." "But what evidence do you have that these mythical humans are involved?" Nari asked. 3 weeks ago, we intercepted a transmission from the border systems," Keong said. "It was heavily encrypted, but our best codebreakers managed to decode part of it. The message was in an unknown language, but one phrase was repeated several times." She pressed a control on her chair. A sound filled the room. Strange words. In a language none of them recognized. The sounds were harsh and quick, unlike any known galactic tongue. "Our language experts analyzed the patterns," Keong continued. "They believe this phrase means, 'Remember Earth,' or 'Earth remembers.' Earth was supposedly the human homeworld." Admiral Taman's scales darkened with anger. "Even if humans existed, even if they have returned, they are just one species. The hegemony commands the loyalty of thousands of worlds and dozens of species. What could one small group of survivors do against our might?" "The old records describe them differently," Kayong said quietly. "According to the archives, humans were not like other species. They did not just adapt to their environment. They changed it. They did not just use technology, they improved it. And most important, they did not just fight to win. They fought to survive." Elder Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. He remembered the early days of the hegemony, when different species fought for control of the galaxy. Those had been dark times, full of war and destruction. The hegemony had brought peace by establishing order and law. "What do you recommend?" he asked Taman. The Vorthak admiral straightened his shoulders. "We send a proper investigation force. Not just scouts, but a full battle fleet. If there are pirates or rebels in the Outer Rim, we crush them. If there are other threats, we deal with them accordingly." "And if we find these humans?" Nari asked. Taman's yellow eyes glowed brighter. "Then we finish what our ancestors started. The galaxy has room for only one ruling power, and that is the hegemony." Elder Ji-hoon nodded, slowly. "Very well. Admiral Taman, you will lead a fleet to the outer rim. Take whatever ships you need. Find out what is happening to our colonies. If you encounter any resistance, you are authorized to use whatever force is necessary." "What about prisoners?" Commander Kyong asked. "If we do find survivors of this human species, they could provide valuable information." "Take prisoners, if possible," Ji-hoon replied. "But the safety of the hegemony comes first. If these beings pose a threat to galactic peace, they must be stopped." The meeting ended, and the counselors began to leave. But Ji-hoon remained in his chair, staring at the holographic map. The red dots marking the missing colonies seemed to glow brighter in the dim light. Counselor Nari approached him. Her crystal body had turned a worried blue again. "Elder Ji-hoon, do you really believe these humans exist?" The old leader was quiet for a moment. "I was young when I first heard the stories, Nari. Back then, they were told as warnings. The humans were described as beings who could not be conquered because they would not stay conquered. They would return, stronger and smarter than before." "But surely that is impossible," Nari said. Ji-hoon looked at the map one more time. "Let us hope so, my friend. Let us hope so." As the lights dimmed in the council chamber, neither of them noticed the small device hidden in the shadows. It had recorded everything. And somewhere in the darkness of space, that recording was already being transmitted to receivers that had waited 500 years to hear those words. The humans were indeed returning, and they had been listening all along. Captain Woojin stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Will. The massive ship was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, preparing for whatever they might find in the Kepler 442 system. Woojin was Altarian, like Elder Ji-hoon, but much younger. His purple skin was smooth, and his eyes were sharp with intelligence. He had been chosen to lead this mission because he was careful and smart. The hegemony did not want to start a war by accident. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 10 seconds, announced Lieutenant So-min. She was Kalari, her crystal body glowing a steady green as she focused on her work. So-min was the best communications officer in the fleet. She could speak 37 different languages and understand 50 more. The stars shifted around them as the ship returned to normal space. Immediately, alarms began to sound. "Contact!" shouted Ensign Tae-hyun from the sensor station. "Multiple ships, bearing 27 Mark IV. Woojin moved to the main display. What he saw made him stop and stare. 7 ships hung in space ahead of them. But these ships were like nothing in the hegemony database. They were made of metal instead of the energy-based materials most civilized species used. They had no visible shields or energy barriers. Their weapons looked like simple projectile launchers. "Captain," said Commander Dong-yun, Woojin's second in command, "those ships, they look ancient, like something from the early space age." Woojin studied the vessels carefully. They were smaller than hegemony ships, maybe a few 100 meters long each. Their design was strange, angular and aggressive, like they were built for war rather than exploration. "Any response to our arrival?" Woojin asked. "Negative, sir," Soman replied. They are maintaining position. No weapons powered, no shields raised. But, sir, they are scanning us. With what? Dong-yun asked. I do not see any sensor arrays. That is the strange part, Soman said. The scans are very advanced, more detailed than anything in our database. They are analyzing our hull composition, our energy output, even our crew complement. Wu Jin frowned. How could such primitive-looking ships have advanced sensors? Open a channel. Standard first contact protocols. Salmon's hands moved over her controls. Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all known frequencies. Wu Jin cleared his throat. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Wu Jin of the Hegemony Ship Sovereigns. Will, you are in territory claimed by the Galactic Hegemony. Identify yourselves and state your purpose in this system. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers, speaking perfect galactic standard with no accent or translation delay. Greetings, Captain Wu Jin. This is Commander Hyun Woo of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered human space. State your business or withdraw immediately. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the speakers as if they could not believe what they had heard. Did he say, human? Whispered Ensign Tae-hyun. Terran Defense Force? Dong-yun added quietly. Wu Jin felt his heart's beating faster. Humans were supposed to be myths, stories told to frighten young species. But here was someone claiming to be human, speaking their language perfectly and acting like he owned this system. Unknown vessel, Wu Jin said, trying to keep his voice steady. There are no authorized colonies in this system. By what right do you claim this space? The reply came quickly. By right of prior claim and settlement. Humans have lived in this region for 500 years. We suggest you check your historical records more carefully. Lieutenant Somin looked at her captain with wide eyes. Sir, how does he know Galactic standard so well? That language has only existed for 200 years, and his ship, the translation systems show no delay. He is speaking our language naturally. Wu Jin was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Something was very wrong here. These ships looked primitive, but their sensors were advanced. These humans spoke their language perfectly, but humans were supposed to be extinct. Commander Hyun-woo, Wu Jin said, I am going to send you our standard first contact package. It contains information about the galactic hegemony and our laws. I suggest you study it carefully. Thank you, Captain. But that will not be necessary. We are already familiar with the hegemony and its laws. We choose not to follow them. The words sent a chill through the bridge crew. No one refused hegemony law. No one. Commander, Wu Jin said, his voice becoming harder. You do not understand. The hegemony maintains peace and order throughout the galaxy. All civilized species follow our laws. There is no choice in this matter. There is always a choice, Captain. We made ours long ago. Wu Jin looked at his tactical officer. Weapons status? All systems ready, sir. The unknown ships still show no shields or energy weapons. Their hulls appear to be simple metal alloy. One shot from our main guns would destroy all of them. Wu Jin made a decision. These humans, if that is what they really were, needed to understand the reality of their situation. The hegemony did not negotiate with primitives who refused to. Follow galactic law. Targeting, Wu Jin ordered. Select the largest asteroid in the system. We will demonstrate our capabilities. Sir? Soman looked worried. Are you sure that is wise? We do not know how they will respond. They need to understand what they are dealing with, Wu Jin replied. These humans have been isolated for too long. A demonstration of our power will help them see reason. The Sovereign's will turned toward a large asteroid floating nearby. It was a huge rock, maybe 10 kilometers across. The ship's main weapon, a planet cracker beam that could split worlds in half, began to charge. Unknown vessels, Wu Jin announced. We are going to demonstrate the power of hegemony technology. Please observe. The beam fired. Pure energy lanced across space and struck the asteroid. For a moment, the rock glowed white-hot. Then it exploded into 1,000,000 pieces, scattered across the void. Impressive, came Commander Hyunwoo's voice. He sounded completely calm. Now let us show you human technology. Sir, Taehyun shouted from his station. The human ships are moving! Wu Jin spun to look at the display. The 7 human vessels had spread out in a perfect formation. They moved with incredible precision, like they were controlled by a single mind. But they were still moving slowly, and they still showed no energy weapons or shields. What are they doing? Dongyun wondered. Targeting our ship, Soman said quietly. All 7 vessels have locked onto us. Wu Jin laughed. With what weapons? I see no energy projectors, no missile tubes. What are they going to do? Throw rocks? At us? Sir, Taehyun said, his voice strange. They are firing. On the display, small objects shot out from the human ships. They were moving very fast, but they looked like simple metal projectiles. Nothing that could threaten a hegemony dreadnought. Raise shields, Wu Jin ordered, just to be safe. The shields came up, a shimmering barrier of energy around the ship. The projectile struck the barrier and passed right through. The shields did not even slow them down. What? Wu Jin stared at the display. How is that possible? Sir, Taehyun was almost shouting now. The projectiles are not energy-based. They are solid matter moving at incredible speed. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not physical objects. The metal projectile struck the Sovereign's will. The ship shuddered as the railgun rounds tore through its hull like paper. Alarms screamed as sections of the ship lost. Power! Damage report! Wu Jin yelled. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 16, came the reply. Main engines offline. Weapon systems damaged. More projectiles struck the ship. Each impact sent vibrations through the bridge. Wu Jin watched in horror as his mighty dreadnought was torn apart by simple metal bullets. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? Sir, Soman said quietly, I am detecting massive kinetic energy in those projectiles. They are moving at a significant fraction of light speed. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal carries devastating force. Impossible! Dongyun protested. Nothing can accelerate matter to those speeds without enormous energy requirements. Unless, Taehyun said slowly, unless they have learned to do it efficiently. Sir, I am reading their weapon signatures now. These are magnetic acceleration weapons, railguns. But the power efficiency is far beyond anything in our database. The human ships stopped firing. The Sovereign's will drifted. In space, badly damaged but still alive. Around them floated the debris from the attack, pieces of hull, fragments of equipment, and the hopes of hegemony superiority. Commander Hyun Woo's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain Wu Jin, are you still there?" Wu Jin forced himself to speak. "Yes, we are here." "Good. We did not want to kill you. Only to make a point." "What point?" Wu Jin asked weakly. "That your technology is not as advanced as you think, that your weapons are not as powerful as you believe, and that humanity has spent 500 years learning how to fight enemies exactly like you. But your ships look so primitive." "Appearances can be deceiving, Captain. We have learned to build strong ships that do not show their strength. We have learned to hide our weapons until we need them. Most importantly, we have learned patience." Wu Jin looked around his damaged bridge. His crew stared at him with frightened eyes. The most powerful ship in the hegemony fleet had been defeated by 7 vessels that looked like museum pieces. "What do you want?" Wu Jin asked. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in 3,000 years of hegemony history. Elder Ji-hoon sat at the head of the table, his ancient face grave as he listened to Captain Wu Jin's report. Around the table, representatives from 12 species whispered among themselves in growing alarm. Counselor Nari's crystal body flickered between colors. Blue for worry, red for disbelief, yellow for intense thought. She had reviewed the sensor data from the Sovereign's will a dozen times, and each reading told the same impossible story. "Show them the weapon analysis again," Nari said to Wu Jin. The holographic display above the table lit up with technical diagrams. Numbers and equations floated in the air, describing the energy output of the human railguns. The data was clear and terrifying. The projectiles achieved 92% of light speed, Nari explained to the council. At that velocity, a piece of metal the size of your fist carries the same energy as a tactical nuclear weapon, but the power requirements should be enormous. No known technology can achieve this level of efficiency. Admiral Taman studied the data with professional interest. Despite the damage to his pride, he was a warrior first. "The acceleration curves are perfect," he said. "No waste energy, no secondary emissions. These weapons are more advanced than anything we have ever seen." "But they look so primitive," protested Counselor Vrax of the Nephrim. His gas form shifted colors as he spoke, releasing chemical signals of confusion. "Metal hulls, no visible energy shields, no plasma weapons. How can they be so advanced?" Commander Kyong leaned forward in her chair. "Perhaps that is exactly the point. What if they designed their ships to look primitive on purpose?" "Why would anyone do that?" asked the Verdani representative, her leaves rustling with uncertainty. "To be underestimated," Keong replied. "Think about it. We saw their ships and assumed they were weak. Captain Wu Jin fired a demonstration shot instead of attacking immediately. The humans used our assumptions against us." Elder Ji-hoon had been quiet throughout most of the meeting, But now he spoke. There is something you all need to know. Something the archives have hidden for 5 centuries. He turned to an ancient Kalari sitting in the corner. Archivist Do-Yun, show them the sealed records. Do-Yun was older than most beings in the galaxy. His crystal body was clouded with age, and his movements were slow and careful. He had been the keeper of the hegemony's deepest secrets for over 800 years. Are you certain, Elder? Do-Yun asked. These records were sealed by order of the First Council. Open them, Ji-Hoon commanded. The Council needs to know the truth. Do-Yun activated a hidden panel in the table. Ancient symbols appeared in the air, not the modern galactic standard, but the old writing used by the First Hegemony. As he worked, the symbols began to translate into readable text. 512 years ago, Do-Yun began, the galactic hegemony was very different. We were not the peaceful organization you know today. We were an alliance of conquest, expanding across the galaxy and forcing other species to submit to our rule. The younger council members shifted uncomfortably. This was not the history they had been taught. During our expansion, we encountered a young species on the 3rd planet of a yellow star. They called themselves humans, and their world was named Earth. At first, we thought they would be easy to conquer. They had only recently developed spaceflight and had not yet spread to other worlds. Do-Yun paused, his clouded eyes reflecting memories of reports written centuries ago. We were wrong. The humans refused to surrender. When we demanded they follow hegemony law, they said no. When we sent ships to enforce our demands, they fought back. When we brought bigger fleets, they built better weapons. The hologram changed, showing battle reports from the ancient war. Ship after ship, fleet after fleet, all destroyed by human forces that should have been overwhelmed. The humans were like nothing we had ever encountered, Do-Yun continued. Other species, when faced with superior numbers, would surrender or flee. The humans did something else entirely. They adapted. What do you mean? Nari asked. Every time we destroyed a human ship, they learned from the defeat. Every new weapon we used, they found a counter for. Every tactic we employed, they developed a response to. Within months, they were building ships that could match our technology. Within a year, they were building ships that surpassed it. Admiral, Taman's scales darkened with growing alarm. How is that possible? Species take centuries to develop new technologies, millennia even. Not humans, Do-Yun said sadly. They learned faster than any species we had ever seen. But more than that, they improved everything they touched. When they captured our weapons, they did not just copy them. They made them better. When they studied our ship designs, they found flaws we never knew existed. The council chamber fell, silent except for the soft humming of the life support systems. The implications of what they were hearing began to sink in. How did the war end? Commander Keong asked quietly. Do-Yun's crystal body dimmed with shame. We united the entire known galaxy against them. 47 species joined together in the largest military alliance in galactic history. We built a fleet of 100,000 ships. We developed weapons specifically designed to destroy their homeworld. And, Elder Jihoon prompted, we surrounded Earth with our entire combined fleet. We demanded their unconditional surrender. We told them that if they did not submit, we would destroy their planet and hunt down every human in the galaxy. The hologram showed the massive hegemony fleet surrounding a small blue-green world. The image was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The humans sent a single message in response, Do-Yun continued. It was broadcast on every frequency in every known language. The message was simple. We go to grow strong. We will return when you least expect it. What happened next? Nari asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. Every human in the galaxy simply vanished, not just on Earth, but on every ship, every colony, every outpost. In the span of a single day, the entire human species disappeared. Their cities were empty, but undamaged. Their ships were found drifting in space with no crew aboard. Their technology was left behind, but the humans themselves were gone. How? Taman demanded. How does an entire species just disappear? We never found out, Do-Yun admitted. Our best scientists studied the phenomenon for decades. Some believed it was a mass evacuation using unknown technology. Others thought it was some kind of teleportation device. A few suggested that the humans had found a way to move to another dimension entirely. But they left behind evidence of their capabilities, Elder Jihoon added grimly. Show them the weapon analysis. Do-Yun activated another file. The hologram displayed technical specifications that made the current council gasp in amazement. In the final days before their disappearance, human weapons had surpassed our own by several generations, Do-Yun explained. They had developed energy shields that could stop any known weapon. They had created ships that could travel faster than anything in our fleet. Most frighteningly, they had begun to combine the technologies of all the species they had encountered. Counselor Nari studied the data with growing horror. These specifications. Some of these technologies are still beyond our current capabilities. That is correct, Do-Hyun said. And remember, this was 500 years ago. The humans had only been fighting us for 5 years when they achieved this level of advancement. If they have been developing technology for 5 centuries, Taman began, then stopped as the full implications hit him. Now you understand, Elder Jihoon said. The humans did not disappear because they were defeated. They disappeared because they chose to leave. And they spent 500 years somewhere beyond our reach, learning and growing and preparing. Commander Kyong leaned back in her chair. The attack on Captain Wu Jin's ship was not a battle. It was a test. They wanted to see how our technology had developed. And now they know, Nari added quietly. They know exactly what we are capable of, but we still have no idea what they can do. There is more, Do-Hyun said reluctantly. The sealed archives contain psychological profiles of human behavior. The ancient hegemony studied them extensively during the war. What did they learn? Jihoon asked. Humans do not forget, Do-Hyun said. Simply. Other species, when defeated, will eventually accept their new circumstances. They adapt to conquest and move on with their lives. Humans are different. They remember every defeat, every insult, every injustice, and they plan their revenge accordingly. Revenge? Vrax's gas form shifted to an alarmed orange color. Surely they do not hold us responsible for events that happened centuries ago. From the human perspective, Do-hyun explained, those events happened yesterday. Their message to Captain Woo-jin was clear. They remember everything. They blame us for forcing them into exile, and they have spent 500 years preparing to return. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. Representatives demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic contact. A few suggested fleeing to the edge of the galaxy. Elder Ji-hoon called for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke with the weight of his many years. We face a choice. We can attempt to negotiate with the humans, hoping that time has softened their anger. Admiral Taemin stood in the center of the largest military complex in the galaxy. Around him, holographic displays showed the movement of ships from 1,000 different worlds. The hegemony was mobilizing everything it had. Status report, Taemin commanded. Commander Dong-yun, who had been promoted after Captain Woo-jin's encounter with the humans, stepped forward. We have assembled 8,000 ships so far, sir. Another 2,000 are en route from the outer sectors. Not enough, Taemin said grimly. The humans defeated our best dreadnought with 7 ships. We need overwhelming force. Sir, Dong-yun said carefully, some of the council members are questioning whether military action is wise. Perhaps we should try diplomatic contact first. Taemin's yellow eyes glowed with anger. The humans had their chance for diplomacy 500 years ago. They chose war then, and they are choosing it now. We will not make the same mistake our ancestors did. Across the galaxy, hidden in the dark space between stars, General Minho floated in the command center of New Horizon. The massive station was invisible to conventional sensors, built into the heart of a dead comet. Around him, his staff worked, quietly at their posts. Unlike the frantic activity in hegemony space, the human preparations were calm and methodical. They had been planning this moment for 5 centuries. Intelligence report, Minho said to the woman beside him. Captain Yeji activated a holographic display. She was young by human standards, only 35 years old, but she had been trained from birth for this mission. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes missed nothing. The hegemony is mobilizing their entire fleet, she reported. Current estimates show they will have 10,000 ships within 2 weeks. They are moving toward the Kepler 442 system, where Commander Hyun-woo made contact. Excellent, Minho said. They are reacting exactly as our simulations predicted. General, said Commander Jae-won from the tactical station, are you certain we should allow them to concentrate their forces? It would be easier to defeat them in smaller groups. Minho was an old man, even by the extended lifespans humans had developed during their exile. His hair was white, and his face was lined with the wisdom of 70 years. But his mind was still sharp, and his dedication to humanity's cause was absolute. The goal is not just to defeat them, Jae-won, Minho explained. The goal is to break them so completely that they never threaten humanity again. For that, we need to destroy their entire fleet in one decisive battle. But, sir, Yeji said, 10,000 ships against our current force. The odds are still heavily against us. Minho smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The hegemony still thinks in terms of conventional warfare. They count ships and weapons and assume that determines the outcome. They have learned nothing from their encounter with Commander Hyunwoo. What do you mean, sir? Show them the deployment plan, Minho ordered. The hologram changed, displaying a three-dimensional map of human space. Red dots marked hegemony forces moving toward them. Blue dots showed human positions, but there were far more blue dots than anyone had expected. Impossible, whispered Lieutenant Sojin from the communications station. Those readings show thousands of human ships. We only have 500 vessels in the active fleet. Look more carefully, Minho said. Yeji studied the display with growing amazement. Sir, those blue contacts, they are not ships. They are space stations, battle platforms, weapons arrays. Correct, Minho confirmed. For 500 years, we have been building fortifications throughout this region of space. Hidden asteroid bases, concealed weapon platforms, cloaked sensor networks. The hegemony thinks they are invading empty space. They are actually walking into the most heavily defended region in galactic history. Commander Jae-hwan leaned forward. But sir, how did we hide so much construction? The energy signatures alone should have been detectable. That is where our technological advantages become clear, Minho replied. We learned to build everything using cold fusion and quantum manipulation. No heat signatures. No electromagnetic emissions. To hegemony sensors, these installations simply do not exist. The display zoomed in on one section of space. What had appeared empty now revealed itself to be filled with hidden defenses. Asteroid forts bristled with railguns that could accelerate projectiles to near-light speed. Cloaked platforms held weapons that used exotic matter to tear holes in space itself. Shield generators projected barriers that could deflect even planet-killer beams. How many installations do we have? Yeji asked in wonder. 12,000 major platforms, Minho replied. 50,000 minor installations, 300,000 automated weapon systems, and that is just in this sector. Just in this sector, Jae-hwan repeated. We have been busy during our exile, Minho said simply. We colonized not just planets, but entire regions of space. We built not just cities, but civilizations. The hegemony drove us from one small world. We responded by claiming 1,000. Meanwhile, in hegemony space, Admiral Taman was dealing with his own problems. The mobilization was not going as smoothly as he had hoped. What do you mean? The Axiom refused to send their dreadnoughts, he demanded. Commander Dong-hyun looked uncomfortable. They say their mathematical analysis indicates the mission has a low probability of success. They are keeping their ships to defend their home systems. And the Nephrim? Similar response, sir. They claim their gas-based technology is not suitable for combat against solid matter weapons. Taman's claws scraped against the metal table. One by one, the hegemony's allies were finding excuses to avoid the coming battle. They were afraid, and their fear was making them cautious. What about our own forces? He asked. The Vorthak fleet is ready, sir. All 300 of our best ships. The Kalari have provided 50 crystal vessels with enhanced sensor capabilities. The Altarians are sending 200 ships under Elder Jihun's direct command. That gives us only 550 ships of our own, Taman calculated. Plus whatever forces our reluctant allies finally provide, against an unknown number of human vessels with superior technology. Sir, Dongyun said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The humans have shown they are willing to talk. Maybe diplomacy. No! Taman's roar echoed through the command center. The hegemony does not negotiate with rebels and terrorists. We are the legitimate government of this galaxy. The humans are criminals who refused to accept lawful authority 500 years ago. Back on New Horizon, Captain Yeji was receiving reports from her network of spies throughout hegemony space. Humans had remained hidden in the galaxy for centuries, posing as members of other species or living in the shadows of great cities. The hegemony fleet is having supply problems, she reported to General Minho. Many of their allies are only sending token forces. Admiral Taman is growing frustrated with the lack of cooperation. As expected, Minho replied, the hegemony rules through fear and intimidation. When faced with a real threat, their allies abandon them. But what about their intelligence gathering? Have they learned anything about our true capabilities? Negative, sir. They still believe they are facing a small group of human survivors with a few advanced ships. Our disinformation campaign has been completely successful. Minho nodded with satisfaction. Human intelligence operatives had spent decades feeding false information to the hegemony. They believed humans were few in number, limited in resources, and desperate for a new home. The truth was very different. Activate the next phase, Minho ordered. Let them find New Terra. Sir? Yeji looked confused. You want them to discover our home base? I want them to discover what they think is our home base, Minho corrected. New Terra is our most heavily defended position. When they see it, they will believe they have found the heart of human civilization. They will commit everything to its destruction. And when they do, they will learn that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology, Minho said quietly. It was our ability to think several moves ahead of our enemies. The holographic display changed again, showing the movement of hegemony forces toward the Kepler 442 system. But now it also showed something else. A hidden human fleet, larger than anything the galaxy had seen for 500 years, moving into position around the edges of the trap. General, Commander Jaehwan said, the hegemony fleet will arrive at New Terra in 72 hours. All human forces report ready for battle. What about civilian evacuations? Yeji asked. Complete, Minho replied. The apparent population of New Terra has been relocated to safety. What the hegemony will find is a heavily defended military base with exactly the right number of defenders to make them overconfident. You want them to think they can win, Jaehwan realized. I want them to commit everything they have, Minho confirmed. When this battle ends, I want the galactic hegemony to cease to exist as a military force. I want their allies to see what happens to those who threaten humanity. And I want the galaxy to understand that humans are no longer the weak species that was driven into exile 5 centuries ago. As the final preparations continued, both sides moved toward a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy. The hegemony brought 10,000 ships and the confidence of 3 millennia of victory. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. 10,000 ships spread across the New Terra system in perfect formation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, destroyers bristling with weapons, carriers launching clouds of fighters. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory. Through the massive view screen, he could see the human homeworld hanging in space like a blue-green jewel. Around it, a pitiful defense fleet of only 500 human ships waited in loose formation. "Sensor report," Taman ordered. "The human fleet consists of approximately 500 vessels," reported Commander Dong-Yun. "Mix of cruisers, destroyers, and what appear to be converted civilian ships. No dreadnoughts detected. No superweapons visible." Taman allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fought well in small skirmishes, but this was real warfare. This was the might of an entire galactic civilization against a handful of survivors. "What about the planet's defenses?" he asked. "Orbital platforms detected, sir. Maybe 50 installations. Standard defensive configuration. Nothing we cannot handle with our bombardment fleet." "Excellent." Taman turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to the human fleet." The main screen shifted to show the bridge of a human ship. Commander Hyunwoo appeared, the same officer who had humiliated Captain Woo Jin weeks earlier. He looked calm, almost relaxed. "Admiral Taman," Hyunwoo said politely. "Welcome to New Terra. I assume you are here to surrender?" Shocked gasps echoed across the bridge of the inevitable Victory. Even faced with hopeless odds, the humans were still defiant. "You have a strange sense of humor, Commander," Taman replied. "Look around you. 10,000 ships against 500. Your defeat is mathematically certain." "Mathematics can be deceiving," Hyunwoo said with a slight smile. "Would you like us to demonstrate?" "By all means," Taman said. "Show me what 500 ships can do against 10,000. "Very well. But Admiral, you might want to take a closer look at your sensor readings first." Taman frowned and turned to his sensor officer. "What is he talking about?" The young Kalari at the sensor station looked confused. "Sir, I am detecting some anomalous readings. Energy signatures that do not match any known ship types." "Where?" "Everywhere, sir. It is as if there are thousands of additional contacts that our sensors cannot properly identify." Before Taman could respond, space around the hegemony fleet suddenly came alive with light. Hundreds of objects that had been invisible moments before flickered into existence. Asteroid forts revealed themselves, weapons platforms decloaked, hidden installations activated their targeting systems. "Impossible!" Dong-Yun gasped. "Where did they all come from?" "They were always there," Commander Hyunwoo said calmly from the screen. "You just could not see them. Humans have learned many things during our exile, Admiral. Stealth technology is one of them. Taman stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The hegemony fleet was not surrounding a few human ships and a lightly defended planet. They were in the middle of the most heavily fortified space in the galaxy. "How many?" he whispered. 12,000 major installations, Hyunwoo replied, somehow hearing the question. 50,000 minor platforms, 300,000 automated weapon systems. Did you really think we spent 500 years sitting in empty space doing nothing? The human commander's image leaned forward. Admiral Taman, you have 30 seconds to order your fleet to surrender. After that, we will consider you a hostile force and respond accordingly. Taman's warrior pride flared. Even surrounded, even outnumbered, he would not surrender to rebels and criminals. All ships, prepare for battle. Target the human fleet first, then the orbital installations. You have chosen poorly, Hyunwoo said sadly. Execute Lazarus Protocol. The battle began instantly. The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma beams lanced across space, missiles streaked toward human positions, and energy weapons painted the darkness with deadly light. For a moment, it looked like the hegemony would win. Human ships exploded under the massive bombardment. Orbital platforms were torn apart by concentrated fire. The defending fleet seemed to be collapsing under the assault. But then something impossible happened. The destroyed human ships began to reappear. What? Taman stared at his tactical display. How are they regenerating? Sir, the sensor officer reported in a shaking voice. The destroyed ships. They were not actually destroyed. The explosions were holographic projections. The real ships were cloaked nearby. Commander Hyunwoo's voice came over the communications channel. Lazarus Protocol, Admiral. We appear to die, then rise again. It is a very human concept. But that was only the beginning. As Taman watched, in growing horror, the space around his fleet filled with new contacts. Human ships appeared from hyperspace, emerging from hidden jump points throughout the system. But these were not the primitive-looking vessels they had seen before. These ships were clearly advanced, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that glowed with unknown energies. "New contacts!" the sensor officer shouted. "Hundreds of them! They are appearing all around us!" Where did they come from? Dong-hyun demanded. "From the dark space between stars," Hyunwoo replied. "From hidden colonies you never knew existed. From the fleets we have been building for 5 centuries. Did you think 500 ships were all we had?" The real human fleet began its attack. Their weapons were unlike anything in the hegemony database. Railguns accelerated projectiles to incredible speeds, but these were not simple metal bullets. They were exotic matter rounds that could phase through shields and armor. Energy weapons fired beams that could bend space itself, making traditional defenses useless. But the most terrifying moment came when Taman realized that his own ships were turning against each other. "Sir!" the communications officer screamed. "The Stellar Pride is firing on the Cosmic Will. Multiple ships are attacking their own allies." "What is happening?" Taman demanded. "Admiral," Hyunwoo said from the screen, 500 years ago, your ancestors thought they had defeated humanity. Completely. But they made one crucial mistake. They allowed some humans to survive in hiding, scattered throughout the galaxy. Impossible. We hunted down every human survivor. You hunted down every human you could find, Hyunwoo corrected. But humans are very good at hiding. Some of us learned to look like other species. Some of us found places where you never thought to search. And some of us learned to think very, very far ahead. The truth hit Taemin like a physical blow. You have been sabotaging our ships. For decades, Hyunwoo confirmed. Human engineers working in your shipyards. Human technicians maintaining your computers. Human programmers writing your software. We have been preparing for this day since the moment you drove us into exile. More hegemony ships turned on their allies as hidden programs activated throughout the fleet. Weapon systems that had been secretly modified began targeting friendly vessels. Navigation computers sent ships crashing into each other. Communication arrays broadcast false orders that caused massive confusion. Admiral Taemin watched his mighty fleet destroy itself while human forces coordinated the chaos with perfect precision. The largest military force in galactic history was being defeated not by superior numbers but by superior planning. You planned this, he said, his voice hollow with defeat. All of it. You wanted us to bring our entire fleet here. We needed you to commit everything, Hyunwoo replied. If we had defeated you in small battles, you would have eventually learned to adapt. But this way, we can end the threat permanently. Sir, Dong-Yun reported quietly, we have lost 70% of the fleet. The remaining ships are either damaged or compromised. We cannot win this battle. Taemin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were afraid, defeated, broken. The mighty hegemony had been crushed by an enemy they had underestimated at every turn. Commander Hyunwoo, he said into the communication system. We surrender. I know, Hyunwoo replied gently. And Admiral, for what it is worth, you fought with honor. Your crew performed their duties well. This defeat is not their fault. Whose fault is it then? It belongs to those who started this war 500 years ago, Hyunwoo said. To those who decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. To those who chose conquest over cooperation. The human commander paused, then continued in a softer voice. Admiral Taemin, you and your surviving crews will be treated well. We are not interested in revenge against individual soldiers. Our quarrel is with the system that oppressed us, not with those who served it. As the remnants of the hegemony, fleet powered down their weapons and waited for capture, Captain Yeji appeared on the screen next to Commander Hyunwoo. Admiral, she said, my ships are prepared to escort your vessels to a safe holding area. Medical assistance will be provided for your wounded. Who are you? Taemin asked. Captain Yeji, Human Intelligence Division. I have been watching your people for many years, learning about your culture and your capabilities. You are not evil beings, Admiral. You were simply following the laws and customs of your civilization. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Terra, General Minho stood in the Great Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime. The crystal spires that had once housed the galactic hegemony now served as the temporary headquarters of something new, the Galactic Federation. Around him sat representatives from dozens of species, but the atmosphere was very different from the old council meetings. Instead of fear and submission, there was hope and curiosity. Instead of rigid hierarchy, there was open discussion. Elder Jaihun, the former chairman of the Hegemony Council, sat at Minho's right hand. The old Altarian looked tired but oddly relieved, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "General, Minho," Ji-hoon said, "before we begin the formal proceedings, I must ask you something that has been troubling me since your victory." "Of course, Elder. What do you wish to know?" "Why?" Ji-hoon's ancient eyes were filled with genuine confusion. "You had us completely defeated. You could have conquered the galaxy, enslaved every species, taken revenge for 5 centuries of exile. Instead, you offer us partnership and cooperation. Why?" Minho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Elder Ji-hoon, may I share something with you? Something that might help you understand human nature? Please. During our exile, we discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. We found evidence of a threat so large, so dangerous, that it makes our conflict with the hegemony seem like a small disagreement between neighbors." The assembly hall fell silent. Representatives leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What kind of threat?" asked Counselor Nari. Her crystal body flickered between colors as she processed this new information. Captain Yeji stepped forward, carrying a data tablet. 15 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual signals from beyond the galactic rim. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena, pulsars, black holes, stellar explosions. But the patterns were too regular, too organized. She activated a holographic display that showed the edge of their galaxy. Beyond the familiar spiral arms, something vast and dark was approaching. "We sent unmanned probes to investigate," Yeji continued. "What they found?" She paused, her face grim. "What they found was a fleet of ships so large that our computers could not count them all. Millions of vessels, each one the size of a moon. They are moving toward our galaxy in a coordinated formation." "Who are they?" whispered Commander Kyong. "We do not know," Minho replied. "Our probes were destroyed before they could gather detailed information. But we learned enough to understand that this force represents an extinction-level threat to every species in our galaxy." Admiral Taman, who had been given a place of honor despite his defeat, spoke up. "How long do we have?" "Our best estimates suggest they will reach the outer systems in 50 years, Minho said. "Maybe less." The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. 50 years seemed like a long time, but to prepare for a threat of this magnitude, it was barely enough. "This is why you did not seek revenge," Elder Ji-hoon said with sudden understanding. "You need allies, not conquered subjects." "Exactly," Minho confirmed. "Humanity learned something important during our exile. We learned that diversity is strength, Every species in this galaxy has unique capabilities, unique perspectives, unique solutions to problems. The hegemony tried to make everyone the same, to follow the same laws and customs. But what we need now is for everyone to be different, to contribute their own strengths to a common defense. Counselor Nari's body turned a thoughtful yellow. "What do you propose?" "A true federation," Minho replied. "Not one species ruling over others, but all species working together as equals. Each world, each system, each species maintaining their own culture and government, but united in common cause." "And humanity would lead this federation?" Taman asked. "Humanity would serve this federation," Minho corrected, "just as every other species would serve it. Leadership would be based on ability and circumstance, not on species or tradition." A new voice spoke from the back of the hall. Archivist Do Hyun, the ancient Kalari who had revealed the truth about humanity's exile, slowly made his way to the front. "General Minho," he said in his age-weakened voice, "I have spent my life studying the rise and fall of civilizations. I have seen empires built on conquest, and I have seen them crumble when they faced their first real challenge. But what you propose, this has never been attempted on such a scale." "You are right," Minho agreed. "It has never been attempted because it has never been necessary. But the approaching threat will require capabilities that no single species possesses. We will need the Kalari's computational abilities, the Vorthak's military expertise, the Nephrim's intelligence networks, the Verdani's biological sciences, and dozens of other specializations." "What about the humans?" asked Commander Jae-Wan, who had accompanied Minho from the fleet. "What unique capability do we bring to this alliance?" Captain Yeji answered. "Adaptation. Humans are the only species that has consistently improved under pressure. When other species face overwhelming challenges, they either overcome them with their existing capabilities or they fail. Humans change themselves to meet the challenge." "And coordination," added Commander Hyunwoo, who had just arrived from overseeing the integration of hegemony survivors. "Humans have a unique ability to see the big picture while managing the details. We can unite diverse groups with different goals and capabilities." Elder Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair. "So you propose to organize the galaxy's defense against this external threat?" "We propose to help the galaxy organize its own defense," Minho corrected. "The Federation will succeed only if every member contributes willingly because they believe in the cause and trust in the leadership." "And if some species refuse to join?" Taman asked. "Then they refuse," Minho said simply. "We will not force anyone to participate. Forced cooperation is not cooperation at all. But we will share our information about the approaching threat with everyone. And we will welcome any species that chooses to join us later." Counselor Nari stood up, her crystal body shimmering with decision. "The Kalari will join this federation. Our computational resources are at your disposal." One by one, other representatives stood and voiced their support. The Altarians, led by Elder Ji-hoon, the Vorthak, with Admiral Taman speaking for his people. Even some of the species that had been reluctant to fight the humans now offered their cooperation. But not everyone was convinced. The Axiom representative, a mechanical being with glowing red eyes, remained seated. The probability of success against an unknown force of such magnitude is statistically insignificant, it stated in its electronic voice. The Axiom will consider the proposal, but we cannot commit our resources to a cause with such poor odds of victory. We understand, Minho replied without anger. The offer remains open if you change your analysis. As the formal session ended, and representatives began to leave, Elder Ji-hoon approached General Minho privately. I must ask you one more question, the old Altarian said. Do you truly believe we can succeed against this external threat? Minho was quiet for a moment, then smiled. Elder Ji-hoon, 500 years ago, the greatest military force in galactic history, tried to destroy humanity. We were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. We had primitive technology and no allies. By every logical analysis, we should have been extinct within days, but you survived. We did more than survive. We grew stronger. We learned. We adapted. And in the end, we won. Minho looked out through the crystal windows at the stars beyond. Humans have a saying, it is not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. We may be facing impossible odds, but we have 50 years to prepare, and we have the combined capabilities of an entire galaxy. And if that is not enough, then we will adapt until it is enough, Minho said with quiet confidence. That is what humans do. That is what the Federation will do. 6 months later, the galaxy was transforming. Massive shipyards appeared in orbit around dozens of worlds, building vessels that combined the best technologies of every species. Human adaptability merged with Kalari precision, Vorthak strength, and Nephrim intelligence to create weapons and defenses unlike anything ever seen. Admiral Taman found himself working closely with Commander Hunwoo, training mixed-species crews in new forms of warfare. The former enemies had become partners, united by a common purpose. Captain Yeji established intelligence networks that stretched across the galaxy, monitoring for any sign of the approaching threat while also ensuring that Federation resources were distributed fairly. And in the archives of Nexus Prime, archivist Do-hyun began writing a new history. Not the story of conquest and submission that had defined the hegemony, but the story of cooperation and hope that would define the Federation. The humans returned not as conquerors, but as liberators, he wrote. They freed us not just from oppression, but from the limitations of our own narrow thinking. They showed us that strength comes not from domination, but from unity, and they gave us something we had not had for millennia, a future worth fighting for. As the first Federation ships took their positions at the galaxy's edge, General Minho stood in his new office overlooking the crystal spires of Nexus Prime. The approaching threat was still decades away, but already he could see changes that gave him hope.